and welcome to the SEDC Webcast, an online educated platform at the Southern Economic Development Council. As we move forward through this webcast, SEDC is excited to publish strategy conversations with economic developers, policymakers, business leaders, and subject matter experts. This is a free membership service to enhance professional capacity to continually accelerate economic development in the American South. And there are no better speakers than SEDC members and partners who collectively set the global professional standard in our industry. Today, we're happy to present Community Development and You, which is an overview of the Community Development Council presented by Shelby Fiegel of the University of Central Arkansas. For many years, SEDC has served as the administrative arm of CDC as it established professional standards and trainings and coordinated the National Community Development Institute network. The integration of community and economic development has never been stronger in SEDC's footprint, and we're excited to welcome you to learn more about an important American South advantage on the SEDC Webcast.
Thank you, SEDC, for inviting me to speak today. My name is Shelby Fiegel. I'm with the University of Central Arkansas Center for Community and Economic Development. Today, I'm going to talk a little bit about community development, CDI, and CCD, and what we do. And I just want to thank Matt and Matthew and the whole SEDC team for inviting me today. So let's get this started and get it kicked off. If you're not familiar with what we do, at UCA or at CCD, I want to do a little breakdown of that. So the Center for Community and Economic Development's mission is to have a positive impact on communities by equipping leaders with economic tools and resources, building consensus to achieve community goals, and bringing UCA resources and communities together. And our vision is very, very pie in the sky, but we envision communities with robust economies, a flourishing quality of life, and diverse and engaged citizen leaders. And the way that we do that, the way I describe it, because I know it's a little confusing sometimes for people who aren't familiar with our work, but we have two pillars of service. And one pillar is training. That's really what we're known for, the Community Development Institute, which I'm going to talk about a little bit more throughout this video. We've been doing CDI for 37 years, and that's actually our big connection to SEDC. Again, talking about that a little bit later. We do regional training events. So CDI is a 3-year community economic development training program with 1 week of training per year. We deep dive into tons of different subjects throughout that 3-year cycle. But we recognize that there are a lot of community leaders, especially in our more rural communities, that might not be able to access CDI, whether that be through just not having the resources to attend, or maybe their schedules, they might be part-time or a city council member. So we recognize that we need to offer trainings that are really accessible to all community leaders. So we do lots of regional training events that might be via Zoom or in person. We travel across the state of Arkansas. We've even traveled out of state to host those regional trainings. This year, we're actually in Neosho, Missouri, doing a regional training where we work with local leaders to cultivate and develop a unique training experience depending on the needs of that area or region. And most of those events are free of charge to community leaders outside of maybe a lunch fee, but normally we find a sponsor to cover those costs. We also do things like poverty simulations where we talk about the cycle of poverty, how to break that cycle, and how to better support those who are in the most need in our communities. We do lots of simulations throughout the year. We actually offer other simulations as well. There's a simulation called the Futures Game where we talk about the importance of long-term decision-making and how that affects our communities, the decisions we make now and how they affect us into the future. We have a simulation that we actually do at CDI that we've taken on the road called Newtonia, where community leaders have to build a community from the ground up and really get into the weeds of what that means and maybe how differing opinions and communication styles can affect that process. And then through training, we really ask ourselves, when we built the Center for Community Economic Development, how do we leverage that training we're pushing out through CDI, through these regional training events to help community leaders make effective change on the ground? That pushed us into the technical assistance realm, where we have a lot of technical assistance offerings where we go direct into the community and work one-on-one with the leaders in that community to create that positive change. So that technical assistance might look like a strategic doing workshop, which is a new process that we use in the place of strategic planning. And we still offer traditional strategic planning too. We think that the strategic doing model focuses a little bit more on the action item piece of strategic planning, which we think is a lot more effective, especially for rural communities. We do business climate surveys, but a lot of community surveying as well. We even recently worked with Durant, Oklahoma to do a community perception survey where we took in what perceptions the community had of different parts of their community, like infrastructure, quality of life, education, and then shared facts about those areas with them so we could combat some of that negativity, but also put into light what those challenge areas are and where they need to focus their resources. We have this program called a First Impressions Tour where to get to communities, they switch places for the day and do an assessment of one another. So while they're learning and discovering, they also make connections with other community leaders through that process. We've actually done some branding projects where we are not branding professionals, but we partner with professionals to bring that service. Thrive is one of our main partners. They're a full service advertising agency out of Helena, West Helena in Arkansas. We've done some branding in Magnolia, Arkansas, in Searcy County, Arkansas, and those processes are always really fun and are community centered and community focused when we come up with those city brands. Sometimes you just need a general community convening to build trust at the local level, because we believe trust is very, very important to good community and economic development. Team building and leadership development is also something we do. I'm a certified strengths coach. We do strengths workshops. A lot of those simulations that we do also build into that leadership development process. And we also even have a VISTA program where we put VISTA AmeriCorps service members at the local level. We have a VISTA in Hot Spring County right now and in Lone Oak in Arkansas, because we believe that service is an incredibly important factor at the local level. And then there's a lot more that goes into those services as well. We do walk audits with a planning firm called Craft and Toll. If you're not familiar with them, they do great work, again, very community minded. But we walk through downtown areas and talk about some low-hanging fruit and long-term action pieces that communities can consider putting into place to make downtown areas more walkable, people-friendly, hopefully grow the economy within those downtown areas as well. But if a community does have a need, we encourage them to reach out to us. And if we can't service that need, which sometimes that's true, we don't have the maybe the time or capacity, or maybe it's an area that we're not an expert in, but we can point them in the right direction. So if you're not familiar with CCD, or if you want to learn more beyond what I'm sharing in this presentation, I encourage you to reach out to me afterwards. I'd love to share how we could support your community. And that's beyond Arkansas as well. So now I'm going to transition into talking more about the Community Development Institute, which SEDC is our administrative arm of, and creates a very strong connection between all CDI sites. And I currently serve as chair of the Community Development Council. So you heard me talk about Community Development Institute. What is the Community Development Council? So the Community Development Council is actually the the leadership piece of CDI sites. So there are CDI sites across the nation, but the Community Development Council is the organizing and leadership arm of those CDI sites. CDC was founded in 1995. It's a nonprofit organization focused on establishing professional standards through certification training, which our certification is the PCED, Professional Community Economic Developer. And that's recognized hopefully as both valuable to community development practitioners and organizations that employ those services. Again, the coordinating body of the CDI National Network. We'll talk a little bit more about where CDI is across the nation in the next slide. And the council has support from both private and public sectors to complete those services. So if the Community Development Council, if you are a PCED, we maintain a registry of professional community economic developers, which if you go to our website, we have that directory available if you're curious who has their PCED. And then our certification process is governed by our Board of Trustees, the CDC, and we work collectively to make sure that CDI sites deliver a full range of services leading to that certification. And we have a set curriculum called the Community Development Handbook, which sets what sessions are offered at each CDI site. Our 16-member board is comprised of representatives from private industry, government, educational institutions, and nonprofits. And again, like I said, SEDC serves as the administrative home for the CDC. And if you want to learn more about the CDC, you can go to www.cdcouncil.com and get more information about what the CDC is, how you can get involved, or learn more about CDI. And so this is just a snapshot of our board. I won't go through everyone, but hopefully you see some folks that you're familiar with in your state. We really try to get individuals where our CDI home sites are, the region that we serve. So even though CDI Central is home is in Conway, Arkansas, we service all of our surrounding states, so especially Louisiana, Mississippi, Tennessee, Missouri, Oklahoma. So you'll see some folks from those states represented on our board because we want to make sure that we have a robust and equitable service within the CDC board. So just wanted to point those folks out and thank them for their service as well. And so what is the Community Development Institute? We talked about this a little bit. But Community Development Institute actually predates the creation of the CDC because CDI actually started in Conway at UCA in 1987, started as a standalone training program. It was really a partnership between Entergy Arkansas and UCA and some other key partners in the state because we recognized that there really wasn't a community development focused training program that serviced a statewide or national audience. CDI grew, it ballooned. We had hundreds of people coming to our site from, again, that regional perspective, even the nation. And as we grew, we recognized that we really needed to set up those satellite institutions across the nation, therein the creation of the CDC as we started adding more sites on. So it is community and economic development training for community leaders. When we say community leader, that is a very, very broad term. We can give some specific examples, but in my view, a community leader is anyone that is actively trying to better their community. So some specific examples of those people would be elected officials, community economic developers, chamber executives, city planners, nonprofit professionals, but it goes beyond that. It's healthcare professionals, education, arts. The arts are incredibly important, but it really is a myriad of people that come together to, again, better their community. And at CDI, you learn many things, but most importantly, we want folks to get specific skills and strategies that they need to make an immediate impact in their community or their region, how to connect community assets with opportunities, how to build consensus with local and regional leaders, and how to create sustainability over time. It consists, again, of 3 week-long sessions held once every year. And I will say there's a caveat. So that does sound like a long time when you think about a 3-year program and coming back each year for training. We do recognize that some folks, some professionals might be interested in going through the CDI process and getting certified on a faster timeline. So we actually do offer something called fast tracking. So you complete CDI training in 1 year. So you can actually attend multiple CDI sites, which all of our CDI sites offer training at different times of the year. No site is offering training the same week. So when you look at our national sites, you can attend any of them. And even though I say within 1 year, technically you could probably get CDI done within a couple of months if you really wanted to fast track that quickly. And CDI works, even though you can fast track, I would suggest, if possible, to remain in the same cohort because we really build deep relationships as a part of that cohort model. But again, I understand each person has a professional preference or might need that alternative timeline depending on their position. But that cohort model is incredibly important to CDI. You build really, really strong relationships, being able to see the same people year to year. So where is CDI offered? I've mentioned we have sites all over the nation multiple times. So we are CDI Central. We're located in Conway, Arkansas at the University of Central Arkansas. Our newest site that we brought on is CDI Mid-Atlantic, which is in Delaware at the University of Delaware. CDI Midwest is in Illinois with the Illinois Institute for Rural Affairs. CDI Northwest is in Idaho with the Idaho Department of Commerce. CDI Southeast is in Alabama, in Tuscaloosa at the University of Alabama. And CDI Texas is at Lone Star College in the Woodlands, Texas, which is technically Houston. So we really have that nationwide presence, and we're intentional in developing these sites to ensure that we could capture folks from across the nation. And just depending on where you're located is how we suggest attending those CDI sites. So we want to make it personal to you. Each of those sites as well, even though we do have a standard curriculum set, we encourage our sites to also offer sessions that are unique to your area. We recognize that each of these places, different regions, different parts of the United States, we all have different challenges and opportunities that we can capitalize on. So we definitely encourage our sites to make a unique schedule. While you certainly don't have to go beyond the core curriculum, we encourage it just because we recognize that each place is different and the leaders that attend that site have different needs. So for example, at our site, a couple of things that we really hone in on, leadership is a core piece of every year of CDI at CDI Central. And even though diversity, equity, inclusion is not a part of core curriculum, we take that very seriously as well. We offer a tourism session, just a ton of different, we do an opioid crisis session. The eclipse is actually in 2024 is going to be something that really affects our area. So we actually offered an eclipse session over the past 2 years. So we just respond to those needs as needed. I mentioned the core curriculum. I did want to break that down because we do hope that you're interested in CDI. So this is what you're going to learn no matter what site you attend. This is our core curriculum in the Community Development Handbook. So year one, we have community asset mapping and assessments, community economic development practice, community strategic visioning and planning, identifying and developing stakeholders and volunteers, and understanding community economies. I always like to say year one is really the foundation of community and economic development. Year two, I like to say, expands specifically more on economic development topics. So building entrepreneurial communities, business attraction, site selection, business retention, expansion, community economic development, finance, and then quality of place. And then year three dives a little bit deeper into the community development sessions, like community leadership development, marketing your community, measuring community progress, workforce planning and development. And again, like I said, elective courses and simulations vary year to year and by CDI site. Again, one thing that we really try to hone in on, and I think all of our sites across the nation do, is creating learning that is hands-on and interactive. So when you come to our CDI site, it's going to be very rare that you're going to have a presentation that's purely lecture. We encourage our facilitators and our speakers to really be engaging, and we make sure that every single year has at least one robust simulation as a part of that year's programming. We even take field trips in years 2 and 3. So we hop on a bus, visit some local landmarks around Central Arkansas. So we make sure that we get people out of the classroom or at least standing up in the classroom as they go through the CDI program. So the PCD, this is probably one of the most important pieces of CDI, is certification. So we want to ensure that if you're gaining that knowledge through CDI, you can tell people via those 4 little letters that you know what you're talking about, that you're an expert in the field. So again, PCD is Professional Community Economic Developer, certification administered by the CDC. You must earn points to sit for the exam. So it's a combination of completing the years of CDI training, experience, and other service. And the test is based on the Community Development Handbook and what you learn at CDI. You must graduate from CDI to take the PCD exam. So you have to complete years 1, 2, and 3. And then we offer recertification as well. So you do have to recertify once you take the PCD. It is a multiple choice exam. And we do ask that folks submit their resume and a project that they completed with community and economic development, or a community economic development project. So we don't do interviews or ask you to do any follow-up outside of the exam. And it is multiple choice. There's no essay portion. So why do participants attend CDI and what do they gain? So hopefully when you leave CDI, you really understand that community and economic development is an umbrella, is how I like to put it. There's really a wide definition of what qualifies as community economic development. It's all of these things that I have listed on the screen and more. You'd be hard pressed to share a topic with me that I could not relate back to community and economic development, because all of these things, whether it be citizen engagement, quality of life, quality of place, site development, transportation, community finance, infrastructure, they're all a part of the dominoes. And when you hit one domino, all the rest of them start to fall. So everything is interconnected to one another, especially in our communities. And at CDI, we really believe that community development facilitates economic development. Nowadays, people want to be in a place that they can live, work, and play in. We have so much flexibility, and we have so many choices that people really have started to prioritize that quality of life. And so we believe that to be successful on the economic development side, you have to focus on the community development side as well. And so diving a little bit deeper into what you might learn at CDI as well, and going on that community development as the foundation for economic development, I would like you to think as you watch this video, what is community development? How do you define that word? What are the first words that pop into your head when you hear community development? And I want to pose the definition that we use via the Community Development Handbook, which is community development is the work done for the betterment of a place after the deliberation by and at the direction of those who will benefit from it. So simple enough, it's just a group of people working to better their place. And place is a very loose definition as well. It can be a physical place. It can be a group of individuals focused on a certain idea or field. Community can be defined as many different things. But the folks that are benefiting from those decisions made are pushing that work and making positive change. And I want to go back to something I touched on earlier in the presentation, is sometimes trust is where we build, as the foundation of where we build from. So you have to have those trust, the time, shared values. That's what makes great community development. If you can build that trust amongst your stakeholders, you can achieve more. You have to be able to know that you can rely on one another. You have to have those relationships at the local level, and you have to value the same things as one another. And you also have to have a set vision, something that everyone buys into, and that's when you're going to see that success happen. And the role of a community developer, something we also teach, is the mantra of fixer versus facilitator. If you're anything like me, I find it really hard to take that fixer hat off. I want to be on the ground with my hands on whatever's happening. But sometimes in our role as leaders, as community developers, we have to take that fixer hat off and we have to be the facilitator. And a facilitator is really just a leader. You have to empower others to do the work. You have to have shared ownership of those projects. And while you can still be a fixer, really the more appropriate role for us is to facilitate that change that happens. And that's really hard for a lot of us, because I know we're all very high achieving and we want to be involved. And so we have to take that a step further and make sure that we can involve others in that work. So economic development, again, if you're watching the video, just take a moment, think about what economic development means to you, those words that pop up top of mind when you hear the words economic development. And the formal definition, again, that we use at the Community Development Institute through the CD handbook is economic development is defined as the process of creating wealth through mobilization of human, financial, capital, physical, and natural resources to generate marketable goods and services. So obviously, the economy, the economic side plays a heavy hand in that definition. And one thing I like to talk about when we talk about economic development in particular is that it is not synonymous with growth. I think when a lot of us hear the word growth, especially when it relates to our communities, we think positively about that. That's a good word. Growth is good. But when we really dive in and take that a step further, not all growth is necessarily good. And the image that I like to populate in your mind is these two gardens. So one garden was planned. You can tell somebody took the time to plant the plants and the flowers in rows. They made sure to remove the weeds. They made sure that, they had little boxes, the planters for each section. It looks beautiful. It's thriving. Looks great. On the other side, we have a garden that certainly has more growth than the planned garden, but it's really just a lot of weeds and maybe unnecessary things that we don't necessarily want in our gardens. And when we think about if somebody's driving by our home, which would we rather have out front? I would guess and say that most people would pick the planned garden. And again, the not planned garden is experiencing a ton of growth, but it's going to have a lot of issues in the end. If you ever wanted to make that garden more productive, it's going to take more time to cut back those weeds, till the soil to make it useful. A lot of those things are probably not plants or vegetables or fruits or things you could eat, not very many flowers. And experiencing a lot of growth, but not the right kind of growth. And in some places, growth is going to happen no matter what. We just have to determine what that looks like and how. And again, going back to something I said earlier as well, the importance of understanding that the decisions that we make now impact the future. And we have to, really come to terms with that. That whatever we decide now has long-lasting effects, whether positive or negative. And so when you think about your community, I hope you think back on this image and that you think intentionally and you think about the decisions that are being made so you end up with a place like the planned garden. The 10-step community development process is something that is also very important to CDI and the Community Development Handbook. Step 1, obviously, beginning the process. Step 2, engaging your community, making sure you have a seat at the table for everyone, legitimizing that process, getting leaders to say that they buy in to that process, forming an organizational structure, that leadership structure. Step 4, developing a strategic vision and action plan. And notice the action plan comes early in the process because that's only the first step. You have to actually move forward with the action plan to make sure that you achieve the success that you want. Step 5, going back to the community once you've established that vision and that plan and saying, do you all buy into this? Not just the leaders, not the leadership structure, asking for support from the community. Once you get that support, publicizing the plan, implementing the plan. We don't want to forget that. We don't want one of those plans that sits up on the shelf collecting dust. Evaluating the effort, saying what worked, what didn't work, what do we need to change, celebrating success as it happens. So actually telling people thank you for being involved, making them feel wanted, making them feel like they are supporting something that they feel connected to. Again, that buy-in, hopefully not experiencing that burnout. I think when we get time to just celebrate what we've achieved, that really curbs that burnout and hopefully creates spaces where more people want to get involved. And then creating that ongoing process, recognizing that you have to begin the process again. It's never going to stop. We're never going to hit that utopian place. We have to start the process back over. We have to evaluate, celebrate, and say, okay, let's go back to the beginning. What else needs to be done? And the foundation for that process is leadership. There are pros and cons to various types of leaders. Elected officials, are really, really great because obviously people got behind them when they were elected. Elected officials can also have cons because they might only be in office for 4 years, or they might want to step away, might not get reelected. Community champions, people that have power, who might not be elected. That might include landowners or business owners. Then there's influencers, people who just love your community. They might not have that traditional or non-traditional leadership power, but just really, really want to be involved and really love your community. And you really need a mix of those leaders and people who will get it done. So you need people who will step up and say, I want to do. I might not want to be a leader in this process, but I want to be on the ground getting things done. And I want you to think again, who are the effective leaders in your community? What category do they fit in? And why do you think that they're an effective leader? What traits or qualities do they have? And once you identify that person who you think is an effective leader, I want you to take it a step further and think, who is going to replace that person? Or maybe not replace, but someone that's going to come in and mimic that leader as well. Who is the next generation to fill those shoes? And I think we always need to be thinking about that leadership pipeline. And hopefully that's where CDI can come in to build better leaders, people that maybe already are in those roles, or those new up and coming folks that need to be empowered and trained to fill those shoes. And then I want to talk about a success story to kind of start to wrap things up. So Kickstart Sheridan. Through CDI, I've said a couple of times that CDI is a 3-year training program, but some sites, or most all of our sites, offer a optional advanced year. So we call it CDI Advanced Year. It's a small group of individuals who've graduated from CDI who can participate. Each site has a different take on the advanced year. Some advanced years just offer training to supplement that ongoing learning process, like CDI Texas, whereas some other sites like CDI Central offer a more boots on the ground approach. So at CDI Central, our advanced year brings in roughly 8 to 10 graduates of CDI, and they actually work one-on-one with a community in Arkansas, a rural community that's within a 2-hour drive of Conway. So Sheridan in 2018 was selected as our advanced year community. If you're not familiar with Arkansas, Sheridan is in central Arkansas, just south of Little Rock, our capital, which is right smack dab in the middle of the state. And Sheridan came to us and said, hey, you know, we're really interested in moving our community forward. The advanced year went there in 2018, did a very high level assessment during the week of CDI. That high level assessment included interviews with citizens, focus groups, lunches with leaders, a driving tour of the community, online research, some other extensive research, a community survey. And they took all of that information, distilled it down, and made some recommendations to the community. So using those recommendations, we partnered with the University of Arkansas Cooperative Extension Service to create a strategic plan for the community, which was unveiled in May 2019. And leaders, again, including a variety of community leaders, elected officials, chamber leadership, school district, business owners, nonprofit leaders, all came together. They actually formed a 501c3 called Kickstart Sheridan to organize and catalyze those development efforts. So they took that strategic action plan, created a 501c3 that was going to push that action plan forward. And here are some things that they've accomplished over the past couple of years. And this is during COVID too. 2019, that was a year before, you know, the world put the brakes on. But they were still able to accomplish a lot of their goals. Actually, 50% of the objectives that they put forth in their action plan, and those were short-term and long-term objectives, they were able to complete. So they got an $18 million investment in broadband in partnership with Windstream. The state of Arkansas invested $10.8 million in Grant County, which was the single largest broadband contribution in the state. And that was intentional. They, from the very beginning, when we started that Kickstart effort, right after the advanced year left, they were engaging in their broadband partners because they knew that was a need for the community. It consistently came up as number one in all of our conversations that we had at the local level. Implementation of multiple cleanup days called Keep Sheridan Beautiful. They did that through the pandemic too. It was outdoors. Establishment of a farmers market, which they are growing. They actually have a paid part-time director now. That just happened a couple of months ago. Development of a connected corridor with new sidewalks between the new high school downtown and their junior high. Creation of social media channels and a community calendar, which did not exist prior to this effort. And they did a robust Shop Local campaign. They've actually developed biking trails and paths throughout the city. That was something people were really hesitant about, especially shared bike lanes and roads that included bike lanes. But they implemented those. They actually did even a test run of that to get the community to have that buy-in. The development of a new community theater group that conducts plays throughout the year and engages all of the community, not just the schools district. And Grant County was also distinguished as an ACT work-ready community, which was another effort that came out of Kickstart Sheridan. In April 2023, they said, okay, we have done the work. We want to sustain this effort. What do we do next? They actually hosted a strategic doing workshop in partnership with UCA to continue to move those efforts forward and continue to have success. And when Sheridan, if you're not familiar, is a very small community as well. So they're very rural, and they're able to do all of this just because they had that plan in place and they all work together. And so the final thought I'm going to leave everyone with as I wrap up is, how do you eat an elephant? And that elephant is our communities, all of the challenges and opportunities that we have. And it's one bite at a time. I'm sure everybody's heard that before, but it takes time. We love to see kind of immediate successes, but the community development process, the economic development process, they take time. It takes years and years and years to see substantial change, but we have to start now to ensure that success for the future. And if you positively impact your community, you are a community developer. I hope you share that message with folks at the local level. I think everybody watching this video knows that they're a community economic developer, but spread that message, empower others who might not have that traditional definition to include themselves. But let them know that they are developing your community if they're doing something good in your community. And with that, if you do have any questions, I'm sure Matt and Matthew are going to send out my contact information. But again, I'm Shelby Fiegel with the University of Central Arkansas Center for Community and Economic Development. My phone number, if you want to reach me, is 501-450-5269. And I was just glad to be here today and be able to share this with you. I do hope that you reach out to me. My email, as well as sfiegel@uca.edu. Feel free to reach out to me anytime if you have questions or want to learn more about CCED or CDI. Thanks, everybody. I really appreciate it. Have a great day.